There have been villains in every era of NBA history. It's the same in today's game. There are people in pro basketball whom fans despise, from Dwight Howard to LeBron James, coaches, owners, officials, and even executives. What does it take to turn into a bad guy? That depends, but one thing is certain. If your name appears on a list of the NBA's most heinous villains, you aren't exactly Mr. Popularity. In today's video, we are going to discuss the biggest villains and villain moments of the NBA. But before we get into the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel with notifications turned on so you don't miss any of the new videos we post. Also, we must preface that these are in no particular order. Bob Branham. Branham only played 4 seasons, but he is remembered for pioneering the enforcer position, which became prominent in the NBA in the 1980s and 1990s. Red Auerbach, the legendary Celtics coach, would push Branham to go after other players, establishing the hoops hatchet role that later would be performed by Jim Loskatoff. He'd set folks up with fouls and take shots that were far more vicious and severe than what was considered appropriate at the time. His time was brief, but he made an impression as a man who worked harder than most of his contemporaries and paved the way for many more on this list. Red never said, "Go get that guy," Branham told Sports Illustrated in 1977. He'd say, "Look, don't be intimidated out there." So if I saw a guy pushing Kuzi around, I'd say, "Hey Kuz, bring him down here," and I'd give him some of the same thing. The enforcer's role has all but disappeared today, but Branham was a fearsome forerunner. Charles Barkley. Barkley's elbow to the chest of 174-pound Angola player Erlander Coimbra, who later said he was surprised Barkley would create violence with me, leaving Barkley as the only member of that squad to be booed, was one of the few low spots of the 1992 Dream Team. That was Barkley's lot in life. While playing for the Sixers in 1991, he was chastised for attempting to spit on a heckling crowd, but instead hit a young girl sitting nearby. Barkley later apologized and became friends with the girl. He forced his way out of Philadelphia in 1992 after 8 years of strained ties with fans, the media, coaches, and the administration. Barkley garnered global criticism in 1993 when he appeared in a Nike commercial and proclaimed, "I am not a role model," looking into the camera. From Dan Quayle to Karl Malone, critics were left wringing their hands. In his post-playing days, Barkley has evolved into a lovably outrageous TNT quipster, but the lovability wasn't always there. Vernon Maxwell. Maxwell earned the nickname Mad Max for his clutch three-point shooting, but it could also be applied to his demeanor. He was a fantastic player who helped the Houston Rockets win back-to-back NBA titles in the mid-1990s, but there were rumors of him doing cocaine before games in college from the outset, earning him a bad reputation. That continued in the NBA, where he got 9 suspensions for trash calling and banging opponents around. The most egregious punishment was a 10-game suspension for chasing a heckling supporter into the stands. He also sat out the first game of the NBA Finals due to his dissatisfaction with Clyde Drexler's signing. With his attitude, he hopped around numerous times, establishing no friends, and eventually retired with multiple bankruptcies and run-ins with the law. It's a tragic story about a man who became his own worst enemy as a result of his attitude. Gilbert Arenas. During his prime, Gilbert Arenas was a skilled basketball player and a prolific scorer. Unfortunately for him, many fans will remember him for his infamous gun-wielding episode in the locker room of the Washington Wizards. Arenas had a gambling-related altercation with then-teammate Javaris Crittenden, which led to Arenas bringing a loaded gun to the locker room the next night to threaten his teammate. Arenas was not only suspended indefinitely by the league, but he was also charged with a felony by the state. Nicholas Batum. Nicholas Batum didn't have a reputation for being a villain during his first 4 years in the NBA. Many people's perceptions of Batum shifted during the 2012 Olympic Games in London when his native France faced Spain in the quarterfinals. Batum launched an uncalled-for violent blow to the crotch region of Spain's Juan Carlos Navarro in the last stages of the match, with Spain comfortably in front. Along with this groin punch, Batum received criticism for his post-game comment in which he remarked, "I wanted to give him," Navarro, "a reason to flop," implying that he had no sympathy for the altercation. Navarro and Spain may have made mistakes in the past, but no one deserves to be hit like this, especially during a basketball game. It's enough to put Batum on the list of the NBA's most hated players right now. Mark Cuban. This list includes not just players, but also executives like Mark Cuban, who has long been regarded as one of the NBA's most heinous villains. Since Cuban became the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, no one has been a larger star in the franchise than Cuban himself, with the possible exception of Dirk Nowitzki. As a Mavs fan, I'd be the first to bring out Cuban's accomplishments since joining the team in Dallas to counter those who criticize his management decisions. I can't always support Cuban's bravado and inflammatory words, though. Cuban is not one to hold back his opinions, and he occasionally crosses the line when criticizing officials or the league. At times, Cuban's ego gets in the way of his his intelligence. Many people criticized Cuban for wanting to make the games and the team about him rather than the players by sitting right behind the Mavs bench and frequently arguing with opposition players. Reggie Miller. Miller may not have been despised by the entire league, but he enjoyed playing the black-hatted villain and chose the toughest crowd in the league to anger Knicks fans, especially during the tense mid-90s playoff series between the Pacers and the Knicks. Miller memorably finished a 14-point Pacers comeback in the Eastern Conference Finals, spurred by 25 fourth-quarter points by Miller by giving a choking sign to director and famed Knicks supporter Spike Lee, triggering years of hatred. The New York Times quoted Lee as saying, "Why me? He wasn't thinking about getting back on D or looking for his man after he scored a basket. He was staring at me." Miller chose Lee to antagonize for obvious reasons. He wanted to provoke a battle with all of New York basketball, and he chose Lee as its representative. Allen Iverson. Iverson was a high-powered scorer. That's about the extent of his career agreement. For at least a few years, Iverson was the NBA's biggest star, putting the league in a tough position. His tattoos were wiped out of the cover of the league office's monthly in-house magazine, and it appeared that the league would approach Iverson in this manner at every stage, accepting his stardom only if his image could be manipulated. Iverson was summoned by Commissioner David Stern to discuss the contents of his rap album, and the league implemented a clothing code in response to the way he carried himself. That wasn't totally accurate when it came to Iverson. With frequent run-ins with the law, he bears some responsibility for tarnishing his own image. Of course, he'll be remembered for his tirade against Larry Brown's business methods, but his feuds with Brown were more serious, requiring Pat Croce's full intervention on multiple occasions just to coexist. Kermit Washington. You've earned a position on this list if you land a single punch that inspires John Feinstein to write an entire book. Washington, a promising college player, was drafted by the Lakers in 1973 and quickly established himself as a valuable member of the team, noted for his rugged play and his propensity to get in opponents' faces. However, his injuries, which he kept concealed for fear of jeopardizing his career, heightened his rage, setting the atmosphere for the now famous game against the Houston Rockets in December 1977. The origins of the incident are still being debated, but a brawl broke out between the two teams, and Rocket Rudy Tomjanovich hurried to put an end to it. Not comprehending, Washington drew back and struck Tomjanovich in the face with a single punch, breaking his entire face and sending him to the ground in a pool of blood. Tomjanovich never fully recovered from the awful injury. As a result of the massive media exposure, Washington was immediately despised. He was traded by the Lakers and his career deteriorated as a result. It's a pity to be associated with such a significant event, but it was enough to tarnish Kermit's reputation as one of the league's worst. Dennis Rodman. Rodman has long been despised, even before his strange alliance with North Korean ruler Kim Jong-un, and it didn't take dating Madonna or marrying Carmen Electra to frighten onlookers. He was a member of the Bad Boys Pistons, but it wasn't until he moved to San Antonio that he truly caught people's attention, amassing piercings and hair dye almost as quickly as suspensions and donning a wedding gown to marry himself while promoting his book in 1996. He showed little regard for Coach Bob Hill, whom he dubbed Boner, or then general manager Greg Popovich's policies, and the Spurs fired him after 2 seasons. When he joined the Bulls, his behavior did not necessarily change. He was suspended 11 games and fined $1 million for kicking a cameraman during a game, but he helped Chicago win 3 championships, so his transgressions were more easily overlooked. And there you have it, some of the biggest villains and villain moments in NBA history. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss any of our new and upcoming content. Thanks for watching.